My name is Richard August, and I'll be your host. Our guest is Christopher Maxwell, President and CEO of the Rhode Island Trucking Association. Welcome to State of the State.
Thanks for having me, Richard.
Last week, the Raimondo administration announced that the projected revenue from tolling trucks will be short about $50 million. The DOT is also way behind on installing the toll gantries around the state, ostensibly due to delays at the fabrication plant caused by the weather in the Midwest. This means the governor had to cut the $43.5 million down to $18.5 million for the year ending June 30th, 2020. Mr. Maxwell, there's been more than a 2-year delay in collecting tolls on semi-trucks, yet the DOT says not to worry. We only plan on spending $8.5 million on the truck toll revenue this year anyway. What is your reaction?
Well, I think anytime there's less tolling going on and less money being collected from our industry, we'll take it. Okay, so the delays aren't a bad thing in terms of, they've collected some 10 million or so since June of 18, I think it is, when the tolls were activated. So we're not going to complain that less has been collected. But I will say that it should be concerning that there are shortfalls. They're not achieving their benchmarks. Our numbers from day one spoke to the fact that their truck counts were bloated, that diversion would be taking place. The trucks would eventually go around the state or move off the road, that leakage, toll evasion would contribute to these numbers. So I think eventually, our numbers are going to play out. I don't think diversion is playing in to this yet, because I don't think the thing has come to full fruition, although it looks as though the 7th toll gantry has just been activated. So, I think that the plan is in trouble. We're not going to again complain because there's less tolls being collected, but it does for a state that has been very confident about their rollout. Remember something. This was posed in May of 2015. It was fast-tracked through the General Assembly and voted on in February of 2016. So it had no delays from the legislation. It had absolutely zero obstruction delays from Federal Highway Administration when the environmental assessments and all those studies which should have been taken much longer. There should have been a deeper dive into how the toll network would affect our way of life. This whole program was fast-tracked through, again, the General Assembly and through the Federal Highway inspection process. So there's really no reason why this thing is being held up. I think perhaps there was some delays, some intentional delays going on early on when the lawsuit was coming to fruition. But again, we're not going to complain. But I think it does speak to the fact that this thing has some numbers problems and some revenue problems. I won't say it's yet being caused. We're not going to claim that it's being caused by diversion. But I think once the full network of 13 gantries comes up, and trucking companies and private companies that run trucks can devise their routes around the state, or more acutely off the interstate around to develop routes off the interstate, I think you'll see number one, a cut in revenue. I think you'll see much more congestion. You'll see safety issues where trucks are traveling where they shouldn't be, and eventually you'll see much more road degradation in municipal roads. So those are the long-term effects of this program.
Can you give us a status update on that lawsuit that the Trucking Association filed? We
filed a lawsuit in, I believe it was last July. It was in federal court based on it being the unlawfulness, and we felt that it betrayed the sanctity of the Commerce Clause, so we filed that. The state had what we felt was a Hail Mary attack up its sleeve, which was to attempt to shield this from federal court by seeking sovereignty over the tolls by deeming the tolls as taxes rather than user fees. Tolls have traditionally been deemed user fees. The state felt that the way they devised this plan They were taxes, and therefore the federal government and the federal courts had no jurisdiction. Judge Smith ruled in the favor of the state back last March, said that it was a close call, but in his estimation, they could be called taxes, and therefore state court was the proper jurisdiction. The ATA, in turn, appealed to the First Circuit, three of the six judges returned a unanimous decision on December 5th of this year, deeming or agreeing with our original feeling and intent that tolls were in fact user fees, not taxes, and therefore the proper jurisdiction was federal court. They went as far as to almost sarcastically say that you don't call dogs dogs forever and then all of a sudden start calling them taxes. They were clear, they were unanimous. The state, in turn, I believe it was December 26th, asked for 2 weeks to decide whether they would petition the First Circuit to review that decision of those three judges. They did so. They have now filed for a petition to have the First Circuit review that decision, and if the tactic to get it in state court was a Hail Mary to begin with, it's even more so now because they're asking for there are 6 judges that sit on this First Circuit, and 3 of those judges have deemed this universally that this belongs in federal court. I don't understand how they think they're going to change their minds. We believe at this point they're just running out the clock. They know that eventually the destiny of this case is in federal court. I think their tactic has blown up in their face. I think it will eventually wind up in federal court, but I think they're just biding time. I think they're biding their time to get the gantries up, and as I said, 117 is the 7th gantry. They're building the 8th gantry on site at 117, and that will go to Oxford Street. That will be number 7. So they're well on the way to having this whole network up and running. So I think they're buying time to get that up before it lands in federal court, and perhaps some injunctive action stops tolling altogether. My gut is they're also buying Ned Lamont some time to get a positive approved truck-only tolling vote in Connecticut. It would not be a good look if this blows up in Rhode Island's face while he's trying to get a vote through the Connecticut General Assembly. He was on earlier today with Gina Valicenti. Ned Lamont was.
Governor Lamont of
Connecticut. Ned Lamont, and he said he's going to put truck-only tolls in Connecticut because Governor Raimondo told him that they're going to win. I find that very odd because they're as we've said, every time this comes this close to federal court, our state, our DOT, their legal team, as I said, and I'll say it again, they turtle. They're afraid of this thing making it to federal court because I think they know what the ultimate destiny of this, that there will be a ruling saying that if you're going to toll, there's what they call approximation of use. If you have a mile of road and you're going to toll a truck $10, then you better put a placekeeper of some sort or some value on cars, and I think that's eventually what's going to happen.
So there was actually a 3-judge panel of the federal court that decided.
That's correct.
And there's a 6th. So they're seeking what they call an en-banc decision from the entire court.
That's correct.
If it came down, did your legal counsel advise you, if it comes down to a 3-3 tie, what happens in that case?
I don't know what happens in that case.
Be interesting.
Be very interesting.
I don't know the answer.
And boy, that would be something if that did happen that way. But I think clearly, if 3 judges unanimously spoke the way they did, cats aren't dogs and dogs aren't cats, and tolls aren't taxes, they're user fees. I think it's really a long shot that again they keep playing that card. But I think the destiny, again, of this, the eventual destination of this court is in the federal courts. And again, at that point, anything can happen. It's going to be a long, drawn-out battle, but this is based on the violations of the Dormant Commerce Clause. And as I said, approximation of use if There's shared use of roadway. There's got to be approximation of the cost
You
of
can't
that
discriminate
usage. You
against
can't.
one class of vehicles.
One of the other big factors, and I think the business community really needs to look at this, is to placate the Rhode Island business community and the trucking community for that matter. The General Assembly put protective caps in place. They said that no one truck could be tolled more than $40 per day. And no one truck could be assessed a toll more than one time per direction per day. So if you have for instance, the new gantry that's at $6.25 on 117,
In Warwick.
a truck can only conceivably be tolled $12.50 maximum for that gantry location, north and south, for the day. They could collectively, cumulatively accrue $40, but on that particular gantry, they're protected one time per truck each day per direction. The problem herein lies that this discriminates against, and we appreciate the fact that there's caps for the local guys, and the local business
Go
appreciate the
back.
caps. But those are going to go up in smoke. That's the first thing that's going
Discrimination against
to go.
the through truckers.
You essentially, what we call hours of service. A local trucking company can travel roughly 12 hours legally. So if you have a trucking company that has unlimited, unbridled use of hundreds of miles of roadway use throughout a day, and they could essentially, by travel standards, be accruing hundreds of dollars of tolls, yet only receive a $40 cap, yet a truck that's traveling 46 miles north from Connecticut to Boston is accruing $20 north for 46 miles of use, and then another $20 south for 46 miles of use. You have 92 miles of use at the same $40 that the local guy had unbridled $40 of unbridled use for. So that's a real problem, and I say that because win, lose, or draw, I think this certainty of the caps and the protection of the caps for the locals is going to go away, and that was in my estimation, it was bait and hook. It was disingenuous because that never had a chance of sticking. However this plays out, those caps never had a chance of staying in place, and that's going to really be, it's not going to bode well, not only for the business community, but for the consumer. Because once these trucking companies now, if you had 10 trucks before, and you could have the certainty of $400 a day, $2,000 a week, that's still a lot of money. That's $8,000 a month. Mm-hmm. But now if those trucks are now, for instance, a construction truck, ironically, that might be doing a haul route, it might accrue $100 in tolls a day. You might have a company with 10 trucks, $100 a day, $1,000 a day now, right? If my math is correct. So there's no certainty now. There's no protection. So those people need to be concerned, and I think that if that does happen, if it comes to the point where those caps go away, then I think the business community should be at that State House in force, saying you promised it, and you did not deliver on that. And I mean the caps, the protections. Mm-hmm.
Now, there was a chart in the Providence Journal on January 23rd.
Yep.
That showed at that point, it showed 5 of the 12 were in place.
That's correct.
And you just mentioned at least one more is opened. But I noticed that the tolls run from $3.25 on Interstate 95 to $7.50 on 295. Yep. What is the logic behind these tolls? Is it based on the miles, or do you have any idea how they came up with that?
I really don't know what the math is. One of the perverse things that I recognized was it costs trucks more. This is one of the things that didn't make sense, and I don't know what their methodology is. I know that whatever they collect, only a small portion of that goes into the bridges. It's a fallacy that this plan. Let me answer your question first, and that question was regarding what happens and how they assess that. There's no logic because it costs the truck more to use 295 than to go through Providence. So you're incentivizing, when our state's traffic safety control plan should utilize the toll costs to drive trucks going through the state up 295, what you've done is you've created a network that actually has trucks saying, hey, if we're going to save money, we're going to go straight through the heart of Providence, where you've got Thurber's Avenue, you've got the S curves, you've got congestion. So to my point, I don't know what the logic is. As far as what amounts of the money are going into the bridges, the director said they're going to use that money to a certain point of sufficiency, whatever that formula is. I think all of this is funny math and a shell game. I can tell you this: the director spoke very incorrectly in that this critical bridge money that was the General Assembly passed this, and I had friends who were legislators, and that said to me, Chris, I'm voting for this because of safe bridges. We need the money to repair bridges. Well, in fact, the money for these tolls is not all going into the bridges. After a sufficiency level, these monies can be spread out to any what they call Title 23 projects. So that means bike paths. That means $22 million pedestrian bridges. That means landscaping. That means non-essential projects of the beneficiaries of this critical, safe bridge repair money. So what we're doing is we're returning to the original sin. We're giving them unbridled use with some limitations, but the fact is, this money can be spread out and will put us right back where we came from.
Funny you should mention that, because DOT spokesman came out and said that the tolls only amount to 10% of the cost of repairing bridges. So
why do it?
And the objective, as he said, is to be fair, making air quotes. And as a result, we know that the annual federal highway funding has increased far beyond what they originally projected. So if they're only using 10% of the money, and they're taking this federal money and they're borrowing it against the revenue stream, I guess, from revenue anticipation bonds, this is really is a shell game, as you said, where they're moving
and people have to realize this is not just about truck tolls, the discriminatory toll. I remember my roots 25-year career was in road construction, so I know a little bit about why our roads are the way they are, and it wasn't because of trucks. So there's a certain audacity that came from this DOT and this industry to blame the trucking industry for what ails Rhode Island's bridges. That's not the case. But what Rhode Island's doing really is I would say triple dipping. We've already got the fuel tax, the diesel and gas tax at 34 cents. So we're taking that money. Now we've exercised and we've really perverted and taken advantage of a bridge formula that was used to put another layer of funding on large structures like the George Washington Bridge or certain large tunnels. But we've manipulated that to have bridges really what are now essentially overpasses. So now we're getting the gas tax. Now we're tolling the interstate, where we've got a multitude of fees at the registry and others. So they're getting us, at every angle they can. But this is a double dip of extreme magnitude, and it's not. It's the first in the country where they've manipulated and I think stretched the use of that bridge fund I talked about. I think simultaneous to us filing this suit, there is a lot of activity by the American Trucking Associations in Congress trying to make sure that we feel that this bridge formula and the tolling of the interstate has gone excessively beyond what it was meant to be for.
Now, you use the term divergence.
Diversion, yeah.
Okay, I'll give you an example, I think. We were out for a drive yesterday, and I actually drove down Route 3, which Rhode Island Route 3 parallels Interstate 95. It's a nice 4-lane highway, and it was rebuilt when they were working on the 95 reconstruction. It seems to me that truckers could avoid the $6.75, the 2 toll gantries, by using Route 3. And this is what you're referring to, is that they would. It's not going to take them long to figure out how I can get around these toll gantries.
Once they show their cards, there'll be a reaction. there'll be a reaction. So inevitably, trucks will establish routes around where it's not all the time, but where it's cost efficient, they're going to do that. You know, and again, my fear is not the guys coming through as much, but it's once those caps go away, what's the local trucker going to do?
Yep.
At the end of the day, though, we've been talking about the shortfalls. We've been talking about the numbers, diversion. All these things. None of this matters because this plan they could be exceeding the revenue exponentially. They could have quadruple the revenue. None of the revenue doesn't matter. This decision and this program is not being driven by the success. It's being driven by what's going to happen in the courts. So all this nonsense talk about revenues is really immaterial to what's the real crux of the matter is, and that's how this is going to play out in the courts.
Now, one of the things that occurred to me is the Raimondo administration, of course, is always touting the acres and acres of cars that are down there at the port of Davisville.
Yep.
And I'm wondering, do the car carriers going in and out on Route 403 all around the country, are they subject to the tolls?
It's funny you ask that because my understanding is those trucks are a kind of an odd, those actually do not, and we're going to check on that. Those trucks are a different configuration than a tractor trailer. Tractor trailer runs, and this is Class 8 vehicles, which are any tractor trailer combination, whether it's an 18-wheeler or a 4-axle combination, or even a 3-axle combination, or even twin trailers, which companies like UPS and FedEx run. Interesting question, because those are all fifth-wheel connected vehicles. The car carriers are connected by basically a rear, almost like a tag-along trailer, like a dump truck would have. And my understanding is those types of configurations are not being tolled. So I've been asked that question, and I'm glad you brought it up, and I'm glad we're discussing it on the air, because that's something that needs to be looked at. Well, because to your point, we're deriving a lot of business in the port, and that could hamper operations down there.
Well, certainly. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that a car carrier with a dozen cars and light trucks and stuff on it are still carrying a lot of weight.
Yeah. So I'm not certain what that is, but it's a good question that I've been asked, and just recently, and going to actually ask the Bridge and Turnpike Authority soon. I'll be meeting with them in the near future.
The other question is, of course, we have Ocean State Job Lot, which is its major distribution point is Quonset Davisville Industrial Park.
Correct.
There's semi-trucks, the high prices, going up and down the roads. Are they subject to the tolls?
The end of low prices, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Ocean State Job Lot, all of their fleet do fit into that Class 8 vehicle tractor trailer combination. So yes, all of their vehicles, all of their suppliers, all the owner-operators that come in and out would be subject to that. Other companies, Cumberland Farms, who's part of this suit, Roadie Transportation in Quonset. It goes on and on and on, the number of companies that are going to be affected by this. So
the DOT's logic for imposing these tolls, as I mentioned a moment ago, is that the trucks cause the damage that we have to repair.
Yep.
And I think you referred to construction vehicles. I think there was a discussion at one point that I heard that the construction vehicles themselves, the cement mixers, as we call them, hauling 20 tons of material, and the big 10-wheel dump trucks and flatbeds even carrying these huge, are they taxed on the toll? Are they tolled?
So some are. If it's a tractor trailer dump with 5 axles, 18 wheels, that's carrying 104.7 with a state issued overweight permit, yes, that would be tolled. Funny, 104.7. A lot of the trucks that are coming through the state, the interstate trucks that are boxed out,
much weight.
50, 60,000 pounds. The ironic thing that really undermines their whole argument as to trucks do all the damage, a 10-wheel, 3-axle straight dump truck, for instance, carries 76,000 pounds on 3 axles. By Federal Highway's own bridge formula standards, that bridge, you actually see in the visual, you see the bridge actually bridge actually warping. It really it defeats their whole argument, because those 10-wheel straight trucks are not being, and those if you're going to say something is doing damage, those are the trucks that are doing damage, and they're getting a free pass.
When the truck tolls were being debated, we actually had a guest on this program, and he said that, I think he alluded to something that you may have indicated, that these highway bridge repair projects were always part of DOT's 10-year plan and would be funded by federal highway funds and state fuel taxes. His take on this was that the real reason for the tolls were to pay for the Route 610 connector project, which would be to rebuild it, including a bus line, bus lane, bike path, greenways, pedestrian overpasses, all this other stuff. And was he correct? Do you think he was?
Well, to my point earlier, I mean, look, the critical need, and by the way, the construction industry and the contractors are out there doing the 610. I commend DOT for finally getting this done, but not on our dime, okay? This needed to be done for years. Trucks did not crumble the 610 connector. Lack of maintenance, lack of upkeep, lack of timely and targeted replacement of certain components. None of this happened. But to my point earlier, I'm sure the 610 was one facet of it. But to my point earlier, this becomes a slush fund, okay? Because it doesn't go to the critical bridge replacements and repairs like the 610. It's going to non-essential things. Another curious thing is that we are replacing, full replacement, the Lafayette Bridge down in North Kingstown. That was built less than 30 years ago. This state really should be ashamed of itself that we are actually replacing, and I'm not talking about it, I'm not putting the contractors that are doing job. They're bidding and doing the work that they've bid and it's being put out there. But something is wrong when a state is rolling out and completely replacing top to bottom a bridge that's 30 years or less than 30 years old. Most of the bridges that we are right now replacing, such as the Oxford Street Bridge, that's the next one that the gantry is being built on Route 117, that bridge has another decade or more of life in it. It's got a 70+% sufficiency rating. We're replacing bridges that have a lot of life, yet we're not touching some bridges that are posted for tractor trailers in terms of weight restrictions. I think they're picking and choosing based on cash-rich locations where they can put gantries that will collect a little bit more money, rather than putting gantries
repairing bridges where they need it.
Where they need it.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're not going to get better, more efficient projects with tolling and money to perpetuity. We're not going to get a leaner, meaner, more efficient, more productive DOT and contracting community by, number one, having more work than they can handle, and number two, throwing more money, just bundles of money at them. And that seems to be the case right now, with all the grant money that's coming in, the tolling money that's coming in, eventually tolling that may come from cars. That's not going to make us more efficient. And to your point, it could just tumble and get out of hand in terms of the cost overruns and what we actually want. We're at the bottom of everything, and it seems like we have Bentley taste, but we have kind of a Ford Torino budget. But right now, it looks like we're moving toward a Bentley budget, and we're going to do things that maybe we don't need to be doing. We need to be looking at the basics, and in my opinion, not repairing and replacing structures that don't need to be replaced, especially when you have the realm of things that need to be done.
The public seems to be in the concert with your view that it won't be long before we see cars being tolled. Just about out of time. I want to thank Chris for coming in.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And I want to
Thanks
thank the audience for watching State of the State, and I hope you'll keep us posted as
Absolutely.
to the
Love to come back.
progress of the lawsuit and so forth.